Of all the Tuskegee Airmen I've come in contact with, and I've come in contact with quite a few, I think the one who I've spent the most time with and who's had the greatest impact on me is General Charles E. McGee. The first time I met him, it was an interview at his house. I was researching for my first master's thesis, and he and I are in the same fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and I got one of my fraternity brothers to get the introduction. So I was able to go over his house. I set up the camera, I interviewed him. And you formulate your questions before you see someone. But there was one question I really wanted to get to, and it was a question on his 3 aerial victories. And when I got to that question, my chest came out a little bit, and I'm like, so sir, I understand that you've got 3 aerial victories. And he just simply said, yes. And then there's silence. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. I guess I was waiting for him to start thumping his chest, talking about how great he is, but that wasn't it. He was like, I got him, And I didn't find out until years later that his greatest achievement in World War II was not shooting anyone down or protecting the bombers. He actually helped to evacuate some American POWs. I think they might have been pilots, but that was his greatest thing, bringing life to people. I've had the opportunity to escort him at various programs at the World War II Memorial for, Friends of the World War II Memorial put on programs, and he's there. And one in particular, man, it was so cold out there. I had on Class A, and it was freezing out there. And there were thermal blankets out there for the veterans. And, I was about to go get me one to put one for myself. And the only thing that Colonel had on that day was a flight jacket. And, he was a colonel at the time. The only thing the General had on was a flight jacket. And I said, Colonel, would you like me to get you a thermal blanket, since I was on my way over there, right? He says, no, I'm fine. I'm thinking to myself, here's a man in his 90s talking about he's fine, and then I started thinking about the song, straighten up and fly right, straighten up and fly right. So, needless to say, I did not get a blanket that day, but I've been on panel discussions with him where I've gone before him, and when he says, hey son, you're really getting the job done, that's the grade you want from somebody who knows. One morning, News Channel 4, which is a local NBC affiliate here, NBC4, invited me out to interview him for Memorial Day, and I was out at his house at 5 a.m. dressed in period attire. We ended up doing an interview. It was, it's always a pleasure to be in his presence, but the greatest moment for me then was he invited us to his dining table, and we sat and had breakfast that morning. And let me just tell you, the general is a consummate gentleman. We were together with him on his 100th birthday. He went flying that day. He did not go riding, he flew. From taxiing out to take off to the cross country, landing in Delaware and coming back, he did all of that, and we were there for him. Every time you hear from the general, every time I talk to him, I learn something new. And I'll ask him a question that's technical in nature about what they did as pilots, and he will answer in like kind. And it's almost like you have to know the language of aviators, of combat pilots, to understand what he's talking about. But it's also a tremendous moment, and every time he opens his mouth, I learn something new. And he is just a tremendous individual, and he's always gracious. He's always gracious, and he's all about impacting the nation.